another episode of The Balance Theory. If it's your first time tuning in with us today, a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us in our quest to find your unique definition of balance. This week, I'm really excited because we have our first nutritionist and dietitian on the show. Her name is Jen and she works for a company which some of you might have heard of called Equalution. We spoke about so many awesome topics, from FAD diets to intermittent fasting to whether snacking's bad for you. So put your seatbelt on, sit tight and enjoy the next 45 minutes where I pick Jen's brain and we get some really awesome information into these hot topics. She has warmly extended that if any of you have questions or queries, you can feel free to shoot her a message. So I will link her Instagram in the show notes. But for now, sit back and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I have a very first nutritionist on the show, which is very exciting. I've got Jen from Equalution.
Yes.
Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. How's your day going?
It's good. It started out well. It was raining. Now it's sunny.
I know, totally bipolar weather.
That's nice. Welcome to Sydney.
Right,
I feel like that
exactly.
is constantly what happens. Yeah.
That's it. So tell us a little bit about Jen, the nutritionist. And I guess my question is coming from the point of view, you have nutritionists, or I guess people, when it comes to diet, you think you should be eating according to your blood type or your intolerances. I guess I just want to know what your approach to diet and nutrition is.
Yeah, so I think it's, I like to think that I have quite a well-rounded approach in that there's going to be no specific thing that's going to be for every single person. Like there's no one size fits all. It's kind of like when you, to put it into context, it's kind of like when you think of sport, you know, if someone's training to be a gymnast or if someone's training to be a track runner, or, you know, they're completely different. So you can't necessarily say that one thing is going to fit all. So when I think of dieting and when I think of how we should approach food and nutrition, I kind of think of, you know, you need to find what fits that individual person because we're all so different and we're all going to require different things. And I also think that, which comes up a lot, you know, with fad dieting and all
which
of
we're going to
these,
get stuck into as well.
I'm sure, yeah. But one thing that I always say and I always live by as well is that if you can't picture yourself doing it in 10 years time, then don't bother starting it because
I love that.
Yeah, like I just think if you don't have that long-term approach and if you don't think of something as being sustainable and if you know it's not going to be sustainable for you, you're kind of already setting yourself up for, you know, disappointment before you even start. So you want to have something that if you can see this in the long term, go for gold, go for it. And if you can't necessarily see it in the long term, then think, okay, why could that be? What are the barriers between it? Because otherwise it's not going to be successful.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Two things that you mentioned that I really love. And the first is that making changes that, you know, are plausible day to day. There's something that's more of a lifestyle change rather than like an 8-week amendment that's look, I understand people diet to get results, but then I guess when you come off that particular goal track, which is not a long-term lifestyle kind of plan, you really need to make those decisions that, okay, how can I make this in my diet? And it's funny you say that because I eat pretty well during the week. You know, weekends are like going off the chart and you get the cappuccino instead of latte, extra sugar, whatever.
Yes, it happens. I've been there. Don't worry.
But more with like lunches, people always say to me like, how do you eat so healthily all the time? And I'm like, you have to pick veggies or healthy things that you actually like. Like I cannot eat salads all the time because they just don't fill me and I get bored of them. Like, sorry to salad lovers.
No.
But like, you know, I love pumpkin and there are certain things that I really enjoy eating. So I think making it as more of a lifestyle change and so you're actually looking forward to those meals is definitely a better approach. And
I completely agree. And I think, you know, life is to be lived and food is to be enjoyed. It's not something that should be boring. Fill your plate up with textures, fill it with, you know, different colors, fill it with, I always think, especially when it comes to salads and people think, how do you eat salads? First of all, I don't eat salad every day, you know, despite the stigma.
What?
Exactly. I know. I don't have kale smoothies every morning. So, but I think it's one of those things that you just need to change it up and you need to spice things up a little bit. And I think that texture is something that I always tell people to build their plate with. So you want to have something smooth, you want to have something crunchy, you know, and also kind of think when you are eating, like, is this going to satisfy me? if I'm having just one big bowl of lettuce, maybe it's not going to satisfy me. But
definitely need some olive oil or something like that.
Yeah, you need some kind of dressing. You need some kind of like protein that's going to then add your satiety. Have some kind of crunch, whether that be from nuts, whether that be from having, you know, like something more crispy in there, whether it's having like a slice of toast on the side, whatever it might be.
So you've got your smooth, crunchy.
Yeah.
What are the kind of textures like you would say would be combined in?
I always kind of like to think cream, crunch, and then something smooth. So when I think of
thinking like peanut butter ice. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, but exactly. Like if you want to start your morning and if you want to have like peanut butter on toast, well then you've got the smooth from the peanut butter. You have the crunch from the toast when it's nice and crispy, hopefully not burnt. But I mean, that's how I like my toast. Yeah. And then you can also have something, you know, smooth on the side as well, whether that be banana, whether it be a little bit of honey, whether you're going to have a drink with it, whether you're going to have, you know, something else, whatever it might be. I think that's a great way to kind of think of your meals, as think of it not just in numbers, and which numbers, yes, they are important, and what you're putting on your plate is important too. Yeah. But overall, I think food and nutrition is just as much mental as it is physical, and you have to enjoy what you're having. If you're not satisfied by your meal and if you're not satiated by your meal, well then how, of course you're not going to stick to it. I would be starving too. Yeah, and I don't like to be starving. I have a big appetite.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's I've never thought of thinking of my plate in terms of textures. Yeah. You know, so I love it. That's a great point. Yeah. The second thing you raised that I think ties in so well with our whole theory is you know, that there's no one size fits all diet for everyone, which is kind of going to lead us into the fad diets. But I think it's something really important to remember because, you know, these things make headlines, your paleo, your 5-2, all that. And you think like, should I be trying it? Should I not? But it's really about just testing and working out what works for you. I mean, I'm not the nutritionist here, but there's so many factors that play into your diet, and it even could be your emotions and your DNA and your blood type and all these different things that I think it's hard to have a diet that's the diet, the one. Yeah, you know? Exactly.
And I think, you know, there's always a time and place for everything, and, you know, sometimes things will be appropriate and sometimes they're not going to be appropriate. That's fine, you know, because it's okay. And not one person is going to stay the same for their whole life as well. You know, they could have different goals that they have in mind, whether that be, you know, fitness goals, whether they're training for something, whether they need weight loss, whether it's for just overall a healthy lifestyle. If you get to kind of the later years when you're 50 plus, and that's when you start to see more chronic diseases and the onset of those. Well, then of course your nutritional requirements are going to be vastly different to what they had been previously. So I think it's always fluid and it's never going to be the same for every person. That's why when you approach someone, or when someone wants to even look into their diet, I always think of it as that, you know, this person needs something that's personalized to them. This person needs something that not only caters for what their nutrition requirements might be, you know, like how much they're eating or what they should be eating, but also just their lifestyle. You know, if you're a shift worker, and you're working overnight, well then your meals are going to be so different to, say, you know, a mum who's got 3 young kids and going back and forth between daycare and things like that. So there's so many things to keep in mind, but that's not to say that anyone else has the upper hand over another, or that anything can really hold you back. It's just a matter of finding exactly what's going to work for you, and then working with that, and working with people who are going to support that, and people who can facilitate that. You know, like your diet should fit into your lifestyle. You shouldn't have to turn upside down for your lifestyle to fit into some kind of diet, because that's not what it is. You know, that's not what food and nutrition is to me. And I think that I'm a dietitian now, but even the difference between when I was doing nutrition and when I studied that at uni to then when I went on and did my master's to do dietetics, I think it's really doing dietetics and becoming a dietitian that made me have much more of a well-rounded approach and thinking, you know, you need to think outside the box, and you need to think out the tiny little dieting square that what people kind of might have thought, and it really helped to put things into perspective in a sense. And I think that that's when I really started to learn that, you know, not everyone is going to be the same, and there's no one size fits all. You just need to look at someone as a person and not just as a number, someone who, you know, has a life, who has context behind them. That's why, you know, you want to know different things about them. You want to know a little bit more of their story, and then you want their food and nutrition to fit into their story, because I'm not there to tell you how to live your life. I'm there to support it, and I'm there to facilitate you to be the best that you want to be, regardless of whatever that is. Everybody has different goals. You know, what I want for myself right now is going to be very different to what my grandma needs right now, you know? So it's, I think that's one of the things that I've really, really started to learn. Probably more so in the last 2 years than anything before that.
No, I love that. And I think the whole point of that, it's not a fixed thing. So okay, great, you might work out you have a couple intolerances, but you know, as you go through life, it's a matter of constantly being in touch with your body, what it needs. You might be training more, training less. You know, when you train more, you need more food. That's just how energy works. So I love that. It's about really getting in touch with yourself as you go and constantly reassessing. Just like balance, it fits in so well. It forms part of the physical health aspect within the balance category. And I love what you said, that you need the diet to work with you. You don't need to make your life fit into that diet, which I think is good, because I mean, I've done very strict calorie counting before, and I can just tell you, headache. And I was like, you know, you end up getting stressed out if you're a couple numbers over, or you really try and mold your life around the diet, and that's just it's not a nice way to live. Like it personally didn't work for me. I'm not making a claim here that it wouldn't work for anybody else, but in terms of, I think living a really holistic life, you can't be so fixated on numbers. You know, you've got to be eating what you enjoy and what gives you the energy at the end of the day.
And I think, like, I do agree. I think that, you know, for some people, I think it might seem a little bit overwhelming, or I think that it might seem, you know, like it's so far-fetched and something that they're not able to do, and it can be quite consuming. I think that when it does come to calorie counting, or when it comes to things like that, I think there's a time and place for it. And I think that whilst it can be very important, especially for new, you know, people who are just starting and aren't, you know, really too familiar with the basic principles of nutrition, and, you know, like what is a protein, or what's a carbohydrate, what's a fat, or things like that. I think it's a great way to kind of give context to things, but I do think that that's when the support for that is so, so important. And I think that, you know, even in my role now, so I work for Equalution, and, you know, for some people, calorie counting is seamless, and it's almost like, you know, they jump on board with us, and I think, wow, you're already perfect. This is amazing. You know, like, what more can I do for you? But then I also see on the flip side that some people do find it quite challenging, and that's why it's so important to then kind of teach, okay, if this isn't necessarily what's going to work for you, then how do we work around that? And that's a lot of why, you know, why we do also provide the meal plans, and why we do also provide other kind of ways to support that, is to kind of take a step back of the calorie counting, but at the same time also seeing its significance, because it's not always just about calories in, calories out, and, you know, energy in and calories burned. It is, you know, while I think that it is important, dependent on what the person's goal actually is, there is so much more to it too. So I think, you know, you just have to work with people and actually know what their capabilities are. And for some, if calorie counting is not necessarily, you know, what you want, or what you can really wrap your mind around it, then once you have the basics, then it actually can become quite easy, and you start to be a lot more intuitive. I think just in the initial stage, when it does come to calorie counting,
it's quite overwhelming.
Exactly. And I think that that's when you really, really need the support, and that's when you need, you know, help and guidance and things. But then, you know, 2 weeks in, and then
you're a counting pro.
Exactly. And kind of what you said before too, which I completely agree with too, in having kind of, you know, the 8-week challenges, and you know, the short-term things and whatnot. And I think, as I said, there's always a time and place for things, and I think it's a great way for people to get started. It's a great way for people to get motivated. But then when it comes to the end of that block, and then you think, okay, what do I do now? And that's when you really, really push past. That's when, you know, you separate the men from the boys, and that's when it's kind of, you then start to nurture different things, and it's not just about an 8-week thing. And
you don't necessarily have an end goal. It's more like a lifestyle. Keep me going goal.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when the mindset changes. So, you know, while you might have to do your time in the initial phase, and while you might have to do all that experimenting and, you know, kind of getting through that, then afterwards you really, really see the flourish. If you don't have the roots, and if you don't have the foundation, well, how is a flower meant to grow? It's impossible. I think sometimes you do want to do your time, however that might be, and then after that is when you kind of take things to the next level and push it beyond its limits.
For sure. So I want to go into a couple myth busting
Yes.
exercise. We're going to do a quick true or false. I'm going to throw some things
Yeah.
at you that I think, but
Yes.
you did kind of already answer one, and that was, is it always calories in versus calories out?
Right.
True or false?
Or
maybe with a comment.
Okay, I'm going to say true, but with comment. So
Yes.
I think it is about what you're putting into your body, and it's also about how much you're exerting. So if you're eating too much and you're a couch potato all day, that might not be the best. But then again, it's also like, our body has amazing metabolic processes and how we metabolize things and how, we, I guess, digest, and how food then becomes energy, and how your muscles grow, and how your brain functions, and how you blink, and all of these different things. So it's not just about calories in, calories out. I think it's also about what you're having too. Two people could be eating the exact same things, but then their body composition could be vastly different.
And break it down completely.
Exactly. So I think, yes, it is important about kind of your overall intake and what you're having, but it's also so much more. So I don't want to, It's a yes with an asterisk. Exactly. It's, as per terms and conditions.
That's it. All right. The next one is carbs make you put on weight. True or false?
False.
I mean, I knew that, but I would love you to explain it. Because I think it's really a common misconception.
Yes.
You've got something like a ketogenic diet, which is super low carbs. And I guess my question is, a lot of people are scared of carbs. Let's face the reality of it. Like, why should they not be scared?
Yeah. I think I agree. So many people are scared of carbs, and so many people seem to think, like, oh, I don't eat carbs, or I can't have that, I'm going to put on weight, or I'm going to, do all of these different things. And that is completely not true. For starters, carbohydrates are your body's first energy source. It's what your body clings to blink, for your brain to function. It's the only, like, your brain needs carbohydrates just to function. So if you want to live on a physiological level, you need carbohydrates. So do not be scared of them. I think it's not so much about it's not about carbs. It's about what types of carbs are you actually having.
Is it the refined carbs, or is it
exactly. And there's a time and place for everything, like I always think it's about what you do all the time. It's not about what you do sometimes. If over the week, like we were saying before, you're kind of eating fairly well, and you're having, your breads, you're having your good cereals, you're having your fruits, you're having your veg, you're having, your rice, whatever kind of grains that you like. And then on the weekend, if you want to go on a Sunday morning and have an almond
bacon
croissant,
roll.
A bacon and egg
Actually,
roll.
That's better. I like the almond croissant better.
I agree.
You're going to go hard, you go all out.
Exactly. That's what Sundays are for.
That's it.
Who diets on a Sunday? But I think that, it's just about your overall quality, and it's about the type. So I definitely don't think you ever need to be scared of carbs, not for males, not for females as well. I think more so the stigma is for females. Well, I find anyway, is that females seem to think that, if I'm eating carbs, I'm going to put on fat, or I'm going to put on weight, because our metabolism isn't quite as quick as what a male might be. And that's simply not true. Like, we have hormones, and we have body systems that require carbohydrates and require those kinds of things. Again, it's just about how much you're having and what of that you're actually having, rather than to say, no, I can't have that at all. So no. Carbs do not make you fat.
Great. I love that, because hot chips are good every now and again too. No, but it's good everything in moderation, right? It's not about too much or not enough of anything. It's all in moderation. So love that. Last one is snacking is bad. True or false?
False. 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 I think for some, and again, it comes down to the fact that so many people will have so many different needs in terms of their food and nutrition. But snacking is not bad. If snacking doesn't work for you, and you're kind of a person who prefers to have larger main meals, and maybe not snack so regularly, that's more than fine. But if you're someone who, like me, I'm a snacker. I enjoy having, something with my coffee in the morning, or, mid-afternoon, I'm going to have a little 3 p.m. pick me up or something like that. So, and that's all fine too. And also as well, for some even health conditions and just medical conditions, having regular snacks is actually important for you. So for people, with diabetes, or people with, reflux, or any kind of, there's so many medical conditions. Yeah, exactly. But no, I don't think snacking is bad. If it works for you, it works for you. It's when it becomes kind of like picking and snacking at different like things, maybe
like a replacement for boredom, or
yeah, exactly. And when it's more of like a habitual thing rather than I'm hungry. Yeah.
Do you think that if you're snacking, you would need to, like, for example, you eat X amount of calories a day, not that you count, but generally speaking, you know how much you eat in a day. If you were to say have snacks, would you then be suggesting that people reduce their main meals, or you just think if you're hungry, eat?
I would probably say that, if you are having snacks throughout the day, depending on what they are and depending on how many they are, then maybe you probably wouldn't need spread it out. You wouldn't need as much in your main meals to kind of fill you up, because then if you say, have your main meals and then snack as you please, then that's when things kind of can go off the bandwagon. Because, once the bag of Maltesers opens, it's going down. So, I think it's all things in moderation, and it's just how you balance it, and it's just about knowing, what your needs are versus what somebody else's is. So if you are snacking regularly throughout the day, that's fine, but maybe, lighten on your main meals just so you're not overdoing things.
For sure. Okay, so that kind of pulls us nicely into the topic of fad diets.
My favorite.
Your favorite. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And I guess we can chat about a few, but fad diets, what do you think of them?
I mean, this is probably very dietitian of me, but I'm not a fan of them. Just because of the fact that I just think they're not sustainable. And I also think that there's the basis of them is not, it's not significant enough for me to be able to support that and say, oh yeah, okay, go for gold. Like, as I said, if you can't picture yourself doing something in 10 years time, then don't start it now. And I think that's what a lot of fad diets are. And when you get to the nitty gritty of all these different fad diets, really, it always comes down to the fact that they end up bringing your overall intake down, and they always bring you down into a calorie deficit, regardless of what that is, whether it's paleo, whether it's keto, whether it's the 5-2, the fast 800, whether, the gut cleansing or the detox ones or whatever it is. Ultimately, regardless of what they all are, they may lead to weight loss in the short term, but not necessarily in the long term. But it's just because the overall calorie value of it is less than what it was before. If you take away an entire food group, whether that be, keto.
Carbs.
Exactly. So whether that's keto that says, absolutely no carbohydrates, well, taking out a whole food group, of course your intake is then going to be reduced.
Depleted,
Exactly. Or whether you go for, something like paleo and it then takes out several different things. Again, same thing, you're eating less. And so in the short term, yes, you might lose weight because you're in a calorie deficit. But in the long term, even when you look at different studies and when you look at long-term things, the faster people lose something, then usually the faster it comes back on. They gain it back.
And that's what I found in my experience doing a bit of PT as well. Like, people doing 8-week challenges, there's very minimal challenges that I've seen that ease people into it and ease people out of it. It's kind of like start, stop.
Yes.
Maybe I've seen really bad ones. I don't know. But I feel like, if you're just making drastic change, 3 meals a day, completely different, you're onboarding all this stuff you've never eaten before. And then as it finishes, you kind of ease back into old habits, then it's just going to be an 8-week stint and then kind of fade out the door. So do you think that fad diets are better viewed as 8-week programs in a way? Like, if you have a specific goal, or you feel like you need a cleanse, or you want to test if more of a ketogenic diet works for you, it's better to view it as a temporary trial, I suppose, rather than I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
Exactly. And I think that that's what a lot of fad diets actually are, is that they are in the short term and they're not long-term things. And it's because, again, the same thing, it has a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's that you should do this and you should do that. And you know what, that's not going to work for everybody. If you are, a mum and you have 3 sons who are all footy players or something, and then all of a sudden you can't eat carbs, do you think they're going to go and train and they're going to be able to perform if they're not having enough, food in the house? And then you think, okay, well then this mum has to make 1 meal for her, and then she's got to make another set of meals for the rest of her family, and it's just not, it's not sustainable. And that's when dieting becomes hard. And so that's why you have to understand so much more about the person, and you need to be able to cater for the needs of that individual and what their lifestyle actually is. So when you look at fad diets, they don't do those things, and they kind of, you know, put everyone in the same bracket, and we're not all in the same bracket. So
no, we're not.
Exactly. So I think that, yeah, when you say, you know, if they're kind of like an 8-week challenge or kind of a short-term mindset, then that's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
So then you need to kind of think to yourself, okay, are my needs or are my goals at the moment, are they long-term or are they a short-term approach? Because, you know, all good things come with time. Rome was not built in a day, and that's the same. How we nourish ourselves is not built in a day.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, programs and things like that, I think they're a great starting point for some people, depending on what they are. And I think it can be kind of like a nice encouraging boost, but then you're right, you need that aftermath. You need that, okay, so how am I going to sustain this? How do I take this from being, you know, a fresh summer bod and my, you know,
ripped six-pack.
Exactly. And, you know, my like New Year's resolution. Okay, how do you sustain that then after February? And how does that then become a lifestyle, and how does that become like in your daily routine?
I think that's actually a good way to look at it. So for anyone listening, I guess if you have a think about what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals, and then consider how your diet plays into that. If your short-term goal was to lose 5 kilos, and I suppose going on an 8-week program with one of those fad diets or something that's a bit more restrictive is probably necessary, because you need to be stricter on your food, and you need to watch like, you know, there's probably a couple changes there that need to help you get to that goal, but it's about life beyond that too. It's about, okay, what's your long-term goal, and then how do you ease out of your short-term goal into your long-term goal, which I think in a lot of those diets is the aftermath is just forgotten and left to the wayside. And I think one kind of a common scenario, which I think really sums it up perfectly, is in the lead up to a wedding. Someone's gotten engaged. Brides, this one's for you.
Exactly, yes. You know, I want to fit into that dress, and I want to, you know, do this, this, and this, and maybe it's only a few months away. And so, okay, for that person, yes, they might put their all into something, and they might think, you know what, when the camera comes on me on game day, and when I'm walking down the aisle, I'm going to feel my best from the inside out, and credit to you. So you should feel the best ever on your wedding day. And so for someone who is in that kind of scenario, okay, maybe their goals are more in the short term, and so, you know, they want to do something like a little bit more drastic, still within your means, and, you know, it still shouldn't be something that you can't enjoy life, you know, between 8 weeks out from the wedding.
You're bringing your tuna and rice to dinners. And...
no, I don't think that would fly well with the in-laws, so let's not start that.
Especially if they're wog.
My family, please. That's another story for another
podcast.
Exactly. But, you know, so in the short term, yes, it might be that, and then it might take you to, you know, your wedding day and you're feeling amazing and things, but then after that, what happens then? What's then?
The transition?
Exactly. And that's when you then start to think, okay, well, these are my long-term goals, because after that point, then you want to think, okay, well, if you're at home and then you're going to start building a family or whatever it is that you might want, then all of the lifestyle things and all of the habits that you've built, okay, how do you then nourish that, and how do you then grow that into something more extensive or something more in the long term? And then that's when it becomes more of a long-term approach of things. So I think, there's always a time and place for certain things. Sometimes some things might be short-term, and that's perfectly okay. You know, I have that wedding scenario, but then I also have someone who, say, they have an upcoming surgery for whatever it might be, and kind of this goes more in the nitty-gritty of dietetics, really.
No, but, bring it on.
You know, for example, if someone is having bariatric surgery, there's so many of them, but the most common ones are when people get a band around their stomach to help them lose weight. And this is very drastic measures. There's lots of things. This is very, very on, you know, the far end of the spectrum. So But, you know, if in the lead up to that surgery, then they do need something more intensive, and they do need something a lot more restrictive to be able to get to that point. And then you get to that point, and then you think, okay, sure, that was my short-term goal. Now what do we do from here? And after a big surgery like that, then you start to think, okay, you've had this, now it's time to make this a lifestyle decision. Now this is time to start looking at different habits and looking at different ways of viewing your food and nutrition. And so, as I said, like, you know, there's always a time and place. So while something could be great in the short term, then separate that from the long term and think, once you get to that goal, okay, where do we go from here? Or what do we want to do from here?
And I guess it's also like, okay, this is working for me now, I've got a great routine, but you know, in 10 years down the track, that you got to be open to the fact that it might not be the same. Because I mean, and this could be another like myth, but down like as you get older, you lack the enzymes to break down dairy more and more. Is that a truth?
That's not a truth. No,
oh, my bad. Well,
no, that's okay. I think it's no. I like as you get older, your body definitely works differently, and yes, your metabolism might be slower, and certain processes might be a little bit slower. But in terms of enzymes and intolerances and things like that, not necessarily. Really, when you're born with something, you're born with something. Maybe you won't be able to tolerate things as well, but think of it also. Just think of it like taste buds. When you're 5, you know, you might hate something, and then when you're 17, you then might love it. Exactly. You know, like
red wine.
The tolerance gets bigger and bigger as the years go by. But you know, even I think of myself, and when I was little, I hated eggs. The thought of them made me nauseous. I thought there is absolutely no way anything egg is going near my plate. Tantrum coming on.
That's my best friend too. She's the same.
Oh, awful. And you know, but now I love them, and now I have them regularly, and who knows what it's going to be in 10 years time. Maybe I'll hate them again. I have no idea. But
so how do you explain like intolerances that seem to come out of nowhere?
I think intolerance is always a big one that I always do get asked about, and there's a lot of myth around it. And you know, if something does come on and eventually, you know, you're not able to handle it as well, then it could just be either something else that's going on emotionally in your life, or it could be something else in your diet that you're eating, or it's just not the right choice or not the right quality. I think, you know, the number one thing that I always get is that, you know, I can't have dairy, or I can't have lactose, or exactly, any of those things. But the second someone whips out a chocolate, or you know, I can't have milk, but I can have chocolate, and I'm thinking that doesn't really make sense.
That is so funny you say that, because I'm like, if I have a whole coffee with like full cream milk, I do feel a bit like can't do this, but when I have an ice cream, like I feel amazing. That's funny. And although coffee, like I don't avoid dairy, but I do feel as though I might have more of an intolerance. But that's interesting you say that. It's
probably more of a load thing rather than you know, something that you actually can't live without. Because when you do have an intolerance to something, so there's a difference between an allergy and an intolerance. An intolerance is kind of what's suggested by the name. So it's how much you can actually tolerate. And for some people that's more, and some people that's less. So sometimes it's just an overall load. And I do find that a fair bit with dairy, that if you're having, you know, lots of really, really heavy creams and lots of really, really heavy milk and things like that, if you're having too much of it, sometimes it doesn't sit well, you get a bit bloated, you feel funny. But then when you think about it, if you go out and you have a really massive meal, you come home, you feel a bit lethargic, you feel a little bit bloated, again, it's the same
overload.
Exactly, it's an overload. So it might not necessarily be that, it could just be the overall load that you're having, maybe the quality of it that you're having, but it might not necessarily be a set allergy or an intolerance. An allergy is something that you have an immune response. So you know, people who are allergic to peanuts or shellfish, for example, are quite severe. So they would have rashes, they would get hives, you know, it's really quite serious stuff. Whereas if you have an intolerance, it's that, and it can vary between people. You know, some people could have something straight away and then immediately get symptoms and be running to the bathroom. Sorry to bring that up. It happens. It happens. You know, or they could be getting really, really bad bloating, or if they have, you know, like a little bit here and there, it seems to be okay. And then if they have too much, then it's really quite uncomfortable. So it's one of those things that it's just about finding, you know, how much you can handle. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good way to look at it too. Like intolerance is a spectrum, I suppose. Yes. And it's, you can either handle a lot or a little bit. And that would explain why sometimes some things seem to go down well and others don't, and I guess some are heavier or
exactly. And sometimes it can be quite psychological too. I'm definitely no psychologist. I that is not my expertise whatsoever. But
it does go hand in hand.
Exactly, I agree. And I always say that nutrition is just as much mental as it is physical for so many different things. And one area that I'm particularly interested as well is just the brain gut axis and how the two kind of link with one another, and you know, like
that's definitely another podcast.
Definitely another. And I don't even know enough about it yet, so I'm, you know, growing in that field. But I also think that you know, sometimes it can be a psychological thing that if you tell yourself something's going to make you unwell, or if you tell yourself, you know, this is going to be too much, I can't have this, you know, it's kind of like, is it that you're actually feeling sick, or is it nerves? And it's those, exactly.
That's funny, because when I was doing that serious calorie counting, like when I knew it was outside of my range, I already felt sick thinking about it. And then I actually had to stop calorie counting, because I just didn't have a healthy relationship with it. And I see so many people that calorie counter works for them because they're happy, they know exactly what they're putting in their bodies. But for me, I felt quite restricted, and I've just developed a really unhealthy relationship with food. So that's when I pulled away and said, what foods do I actually enjoy that fit within the ideals of what I want to be eating and what make me feel good.
Exactly. And as you said, like, kind of hit the nail on the head, that it's, you know, it's about having a healthy relationship with your food, and it's about having a good relationship with what you're eating and how you're eating. And if something is uncomfortable for you, then work on your relationship first. Go back to the basics, go back to your basic foundations. And I think as well, you know, for you know, like young females like you and I, like, we are healthy and we are fine. And, you know, that's one of the things that also, when I said I did dietetics, it really put things into perspective. And sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves too, that, you know, if you had to take a step back, then that's okay, because you're more than fine. You know, like, you're active, you're healthy. Like, this is kind of an outsider looking in on your life, as if I know.
You don't know what I ate last night. I'm kidding.
Exactly. But, you know, so, and that's more than fine to do. You know, it's one of those things that it's a really individual thing, and you need to be able to develop a good relationship with your food and nutrition. And that's when it becomes fun. I'm a foodie. I love food. If someone talks about ice cream, wow, I'm immediately happy. I'm happy now thinking about it. So
but that's right. And, you know, you want to be able to go to have that bowl of pasta or the burger. Like, you want to be able to enjoy it. It's a social thing.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's an emotional thing as well. Like, you've got to have that relationship where you can say, I deserve that, or I want that and I'm going to have it, because it makes me feel happy. It's not about, did I train hard enough to eat that?
And you shouldn't have to feel guilty. You should not have to feel guilty about your decisions or about your choices if they're in kind of moderation and it's all in context, you know. Like, I think you mentioned it before, that it's right, you know, like, food is a social situation. And, you know, even when I look at my life and I look at my family, who are social butterflies, food is a massive part of what we do. It's a massive part, you know. We have family barbecues, come one, come all. It's either, you know, 40 people there or there's 0 people there.
Isn't salo either way?
Oh, please. My dad's a salo. Oh, yes. That's
I'm
that's
expecting an invite to the next one.
I actually did tell him, I said, oh, I'm coming to a podcast, she's half Argentinian. And yeah, don't worry, my dad sends his apologies. So no
worries, I'll wait for the invite.
Uruguayans and Argentinians, they're crazy. But, you know, exactly. And food is a massive part of culture, and it's a massive part of social events. And you don't want to have to pull out of that. You don't want to have to feel nervous going into those situations.
That will just play more into your emotional as well, on top of everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you really can have your cake and eat it too. Just maybe, you know,
in moderation.
Exactly. How much cake you're going to have.
That's it. So the last thing I wanted to dive into was the topic of intermittent fasting. And it's something I'm particularly quite interested in, because I have tried it in the past and I've actually found it to be really, really beneficial. I didn't do it every day because I felt in the start. So if anyone doesn't know what intermittent fasting is, it's basically when you extend the period from when you last eat to when you eat again. So I was trying to go for 16-hour windows. So I was doing no later than 8 p.m. the night before, and then I wouldn't eat till midday. And the way I did it was I would go to the gym, I would do a lunchtime class, and eating on a 16-hour fasted window, I just found, I don't know if it was placebo, but I honestly felt like I had kick-ass energy. Like, I felt really alive. And then when I ate, you know, I sort of, then I didn't do it the next day. I maybe did it twice a week, and I found that really worked for me. I don't do it now, but I'm just curious into the process of intermittent fasting from your professional point of view. What do you think are the benefits, if any? And, you know, is it just another fad, or is it something like good that people could try?
With intermittent fasting, I think it's definitely getting a lot of hype at the moment. And in my view and in my perspective, I do kind of categorize it as more of a fad diet, and something that, again, you know, like, you're not going to live your life like that in 10 years time. You're still going to be eating in that certain sense. So in that respect, I would categorize it as more of a fad diet, and more of something that is a short-term approach to things. In terms of that, it I think it's great that you had, so much energy on it and that you were feeling really good. I think, breaking it between days probably would have helped with that as well. I think if you're going for prolonged fasting
probably couldn't do it every day.
Yeah. So if you're going for prolonged fasting periods, each and every day, then it will start to take its toll. Whereas if you're breaking it up, the human body is amazing and we can bounce back from things. So, breaking those days up is probably what did help from it. With intermittent fasting, I don't necessarily think that it progresses anyone in any other way that another kind of diet would. I think if people say, they saw results really quickly and, dropped all this body fat and things like that, well, because you're restricting the amount of hours that you're eating, you're immediately
probably eating less.
Exactly, you're eating less.
Well, I was finding that, and I actually know someone who did 1 meal a day. So they would pack all their calories and eat it over a 2-hour window. And I just felt like, even though I hadn't eaten for a longer period of time, and I got hungry. Hunger is all in your mind anyway. You can switch it off very quickly when you're busy. But you can only eat so much in one sitting.
Exactly.
I could not manage to. I honestly ate less as well.
Yes.
But the point of view that I read a lot about, and the reason why I wanted to try it, was that they say, you overnight your body goes into the detoxifying and cleansing process, and so by fasting you're only extending that a little bit longer. And so I felt like, is that a benefit of intermittent fasting as well?
I think I do think that is a benefit. So I think it's true that overnight your body does have a lot more time to recover and replenish itself and to burn off all of the things that it has to. It's kind of like, for the ladies out there who are into skincare and things like that, there's a lot of, your skincare routine overnight is very different to during the day because your body regenerates itself overnight. And so having that break between your meals and having that time for your body to allow to metabolize things and to digest things is quite beneficial for you. So in a sense, I do think that having that time period is great, and we do all need it. Does it have to be extensive, and does it have to be for, say, more than 12 hours? Maybe not necessarily. It really depends on the person. So for example, like a diabetic, something like that for them could actually be quite harmful because they, their blood sugars are very different to the average person. But again, same thing. That's, kind of on the far side of the spectrum. But
it is important to consider, because all these fad diets, you assume I'll just give it a go and see if it works. But if you do have these underlying health issues, and it is something you need to think about. Like, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone, and it could be dangerous. So definitely I would suggest getting professional advice before trying a fat diet, if anything.
I would too. And as I said, even though personally I'm not a massive fan of fad diets and diets who put the blame on a certain nutrient or who put the blame on something, because there's no blame on anything. There's no guilt. If you want to have something, you have it, just don't make it a daily occurrence. And so, there's good and bads for everything. And with intermittent fasting, I think the good thing is that it encourages people to let the body rest. And, if you do have that break between your meals, then that's a good thing. Obviously, we don't want people grazing and snacking overnight because your body's not using up that energy. And you don't like going to bed, at whatever time you go to bed. If you've just had a massive meal right beforehand, you feel a bit gross, you feel a bit bloated, a bit lethargic, you don't sleep as well. You're not, your body is still kind of trying to keep up with it all. So having that break, yes, I do think is beneficial. Does it have to be extensive? Maybe not. It just depends. But if it works for that person and if it makes them feel good, then great. And then when it doesn't make you feel good, then you change it up again.
That's it. It's all about trialing what works for you, taking a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, finding your routine. And again, I think the biggest takeaway, which I love what you said, is can you see yourself doing this in 10 years from now? Obviously within perspective, because things are going to change drastically, but can you see this as a lifestyle that you can daily live without, having to manipulate yourself so much to fit the diet? Like, can it just fit and work with your routine? So I think that is a lovely point to end on. And I love, there's so many things that you've said today, so I can't wait for everyone to hear everything. But don't be scared of carbs.
No, don't be scared of carbs. I am not, believe me. love a good pasta and red wine on a Saturday night. Beautiful. That is where I am.
Amazing. And just be wary of those fad diets, and if it is something you do want to try, then definitely seek professional advice from someone so knowledgeable such as yourself. But we will provide links to
Yeah, well, for me, for, you know, the company that I work for too, or, you know, you can always just send me a message. I'm a nerd. I love talking about these things. So don't, you know, feel free to reach out to me, or, you know, have any questions and things. As I said, the company that I work for, I love, and I'm always behind there as well. So, you know, reach out to me or to us or whoever.
Yeah, they actually have. I've been following their page, Equalution's page, for so many years back when they were just starting, and they had the comparative photos and loved the whole concept. So definitely check them out. I'll pop a link in the description below, as well as Jen's Instagram. But I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
This has been really fun, and I've learned heaps. And you know, it's good to know that I might not be intolerant as I think. Might be on the lower spectrum. I think I am. I'm gonna get an ice cream after this.
It's okay. You know what though? A lot of people do say that coffee, it's kind of like maybe it's just the coffee caffeine thing that
I think
doesn't
it could even
well.
be the heat with, like, when dairy's heated, because I feel like when it's in pastas too, it doesn't sit well with me. But anything cold, I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
We should do a study on it.
Yeah, like my chemistry is good, but it's not that good. So
we'll make it a WIP.
Yes, exactly. Note to self.
Alrighty, guys. Until next time, stay balanced. And that's a wrap for this week, Balancers. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode helpful in helping you steer your direction of balance, or working out what that might look like today. If you want weekly reminders when the episodes come out, feel free to jump on our website and subscribe to our mailing list. I promise we'll only be sending you the good stuff. And if you're on a platform such as Apple Podcasts, where you can leave a review or rating, it would be most helpful not only to us, but for future listeners who might find the show helpful as well. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, stay balanced.